Welcome to today's webinar, and today we're going to take a look at the outcomes of the annual IHA Annual Issues Survey. The issue survey we have conducted towards the end of 2016. This is an annual initiative that IHA runs. It's the second time we've conducted this survey, in fact. I'm going to begin by just explaining to you how you can use the software today. So before I get started on the survey analysis, I'd like to take a moment to explain how we'll be using the question facility. So it's a fairly intuitive system. We want to make sure everyone's comfortable. As you can see in your control panel, your microphone is muted, so there's no need to be worried about interrupting the webinar. During the Q&A session, please use the questions pane located near the bottom of the control panel to submit questions for our questions for the presentation today. We'll try to take as many questions as we have time for, but if you'd like us to mention your name and organisation when we read your question, please include this in your submission. You can also let us know here if you are having any technical difficulties, but in the first instance, please click Help in the bar at the top of your control panel window to find answers to common problems. We're recording today's webinar, and this recording will be made available online after we've finished today. And if anyone has missed the presentation as a result of the technical difficulties with the sound, then we'll circulate the recording, so you'll be able to catch up and make the most of the survey analysis. So let's get started. I'd like to begin by giving you an overview of the breakdown of the demographics of the people who responded to the survey. So first of all, we asked various questions to capture the type of people and the regions, the organisations represented among the survey respondents. Here you can see the organisation types. So around 2/3 of respondents were from the industry side, whether that's through developers, owners, operators, equipment suppliers and contractors, consultants and consulting companies. And the remainder were made up of government, academic and research institutes, NGOs, financial institutions and others. I'd just like to highlight here as well how the demographics have changed slightly since the previous year's survey. It's possible that you followed the webinar that we ran last year, or you've seen the results from the 2015 annual issue survey. We're going to highlight some of the aspects where we've seen a shift or a change in some of the trends that we've been following. So it's maybe useful to see that in the context of how the demographics of respondents have changed. So the two most significant ones here were quite a significant increase in the number of consultants and consulting companies that answered the survey, but also a drop in terms of the developers, owners and operators answering the survey. Here we can see that there was a very even and widely distributed breakdown of respondents in terms of region. The question we asked was, in which region are you active? And respondents could tick as many as were appropriate to them. But we can see here that we've got a very even split in terms of the regions in which respondents are active. We also looked at job role. So just over 1/3 of respondents were at the senior level of the organisation. That's as either head of organisation or senior executive. And then there's also fairly reasonable samples of respondents from project and program management, technical specialists and analysts and advisors and others. And finally, areas of expertise, a very strong response from the engineering, those with an engineering background. Also quite sizable responses from sustainability and environmental management and business and commercial development. And the remainder of respondents were split among communications, finance, policy, research and development and others. So moving on to the crux of the results. So first of all, we asked respondents, when thinking about new hydropower development around the world over the next 3 years, how confident are you in the sector's growth? Here we can see that around 4/5 of respondents indicated that they were either certain or fairly confident that the sector will grow. Now, while this is quite a high proportion, we'd just like to highlight that there is a slight drop in relation to last year's survey. So in the 2015 survey, we had 85.6% of respondents confident in the future sector, the future growth of the sector. So still quite high, but a movement in a very slight downwards direction. Looking at some of the segments of respondents though, it's interesting to note that heads of organisations have a much higher confidence in the future sector growth. Over 95% of heads of organisations said they were certain or fairly confident the sector will grow. Another interesting segmentation of the results here is in terms of the regional breakdown. So those who are active across the Asias, East Asia and Pacific, South and Central Asia, and also in Africa, showed a much higher level of confidence than average in the future growth of the sector, which is consistent with what we can see in terms of where the highest potential is for hydropower development. Conversely, there was much lower confidence in South America for future development of hydropower. We also asked respondents, when thinking about refurbishment and rehabilitation of hydropower assets around the world, how confident are you in the sector's growth? We can see here that the confidence is stronger than in new hydropower than in that of new hydropower development. So nearly 90% of respondents are certain or fairly confident the sector will grow in terms of refurbishment and rehabilitation. Respondents had the opportunity to give more detail on where they see new development happening. So we've just summarized here some of the responses that we received through the free text field that was given for this question. Many respondents were giving Asia and Africa, in particular Southeast Asia, as these are the most commonly cited regions for where new hydropower development is going to happen. Many were more specific about countries, and this was focused largely in these regions as well. So India, China, Laos, Vietnam. In terms of Africa, the Congo Basin and the Nile Basin. These were among the countries mentioned. Many respondents were more general in how they described where future development will take place, talking about emerging markets, developing countries, developing economies, and others focused on the type of development. So in particular, it was highlighted that pump storage is likely to play a key role as renewable energy systems are advanced, and again in particular the rehabilitation of hydropower facilities was a very strong trend in this in the responses to this question. We asked respondents to say if they were aware of any policy developments in the last 12 months, local, national or international, that have affected hydropower. Just over half said yes, and then we asked them to elaborate on that. So here I'm just going to summarize some of the most commonly cited policies that people identified that are likely to have an effect on hydropower development. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the Paris Agreement, Sustainable Development Goals, and also COP22 were mentioned, and how the advancement of the targets around the Paris Agreement to develop a greater proportion of renewable energy are going to create opportunities for hydropower. The views of the new US government were very commonly cited too, and the language used around this was very much around uncertainty. So respondents feeling that there needs to be time to see what's going to happen, and it's not clear yet how the new US administration is going to affect the development of hydropower both domestically and internationally. Looking towards some specific regions as well, many respondents focused on policies across Africa. One I've highlighted here is the East Africa Master Plan, which is an initiative of the East Africa Power Pool, in which significant investments in renewable energy in the form of hydropower and geothermal power are projected to take place between 2015 and 2020, which will include the doubling of hydropower, the near doubling of hydropower capacity during that time in the region. There are also many national level policies and strategies that were highlighted, such as Uganda's 2040 vision, Ethiopia's 2030 vision to develop a significant amount of renewable energy, including hydropower. China's 13th five-year plan, which covers the year from 2016 to 2020, was also mentioned. This was officially published earlier on this year at the beginning of January, but it's been in terms of the headlines of the China's 13th five-year plan. It outlines a strategy to minimize a reliance on coal and achieve a minimum share of 15% non-fossil energy. It includes specific targets for an additional 60 gigawatts of hydropower, as well as a major west to east transmission expansion, and also places a very strong focus on pumped storage to bring more stability to the grid. We are soon going to be publishing the data regarding new hydropower capacity that came online worldwide in 2016. We have seen from the work we've done so far on this that there has been significant progress in China with regard to pumped storage. Three projects in particular came online during 2016, totaling around just over 3.5 gigawatts. There's around in total 30 gigawatts of pumped storage under development in China, so it's a very strong focus of China's strategy. In India, many respondents cited the classification of hydropower as a renewable and how the Indian government has been working on this. There is a new energy policy expected in 2017, which is expected to incentivize hydropower development. There has been a greater focus recently on solar development, but hydropower's recognition as a renewable energy source is seen as crucial to advancing progress in the sector in India. And also in Brazil, the government is trying to regulate a specific law for environmental licensing, which will directly affect hydropower projects. You can see here as well the reference to European Union directives on renewable energy and water framework, and also some respondents focused not so much on specific policies but on other external factors, including political conflicts and also political uncertainty between leading countries, and also how terrorism in North Africa, West Asia and Europe might affect hydropower development. We asked respondents to list in no particular order the 5 organisations they saw as having the most influence on hydropower globally. The organisation that came out, you can see here a number in brackets, and the number refers to the number of times that the organisation was mentioned by a respondent in this question. So the World Bank, including the International Finance Corporation, quite significantly came out in front in terms of being seen to have the most influence on hydropower globally, and is joined in the top 5 by IHA, as well as the government of China, the Asian Development Bank and China Three Gorges Corporation. And you can see here also a mixture of many different types of organizations, transnational agencies, NGOs, finance institutions, governments, and we'll be giving a more detailed breakdown of this in a briefing that will be published after in the coming weeks. Moving on to hydropower topics, we asked respondents to indicate how useful they would find it to have access to supporting resources and initiatives. I would like to point out to begin with that we changed the wording to this question very slightly in comparison to 2015. In the previous survey, we asked respondents to indicate how important they consider each of the following topics to be. This year, we slightly rephrase that to ask how useful you would find it to have access to supporting resources and initiatives. The reason for this is because we thought by focusing in that way it would give a better picture of where the knowledge gaps are in the sector, and we've seen that there's been some movement in terms of how the results have come out, possibly as a result of that wording. I'd like to point out though that of the various topics that we gave as response options. We've listed them from left to right here in terms of the ones you can see on the left have the highest level in terms of where it's seen as extremely useful or very useful to have access to supporting resources and initiatives. But even those way over on the right have over 60% of people saying it would be either extremely useful or very useful. So it's an indication that all of these are very important topics for the hydropower sector. In particular, these 4 topics on the left were those where over 3/4 of respondents highlighted them, and those are promoting hydropower's role in clean energy systems, evaluating the benefits of multi-purpose hydropower, reporting on sustainability performance, and advancing policies that incentivize hydropower. Just like to highlight here as well how some of the topics have moved in comparison to last year. So these 3 topics highlighted, promoting hydropower's role in clean energy systems, reporting on sustainability performance, and implementing climate resilience, have moved to the top of the rankings in terms of their perceived importance. And conversely, assessing project finance options. Last year when we asked what were seen as the most important topics for the sector, those relating to hydropower finance came out very much as the highest concern. Perhaps it's relating to the rephrasing of the question that this topic has fallen down slightly in the pecking order. We asked respondents to highlight any other pressing issues, and once again I've collated here some of the key themes that have come through from this. The one that came through most commonly was ensuring hydropower's recognition as a renewable energy source. One respondent said, when advocating the advantages of using renewable energy in power development systems, the fact that hydropower is a renewable needs to be constantly emphasized, and this has resonated through many of the comments. But, respondents also went into more detail around hydropower's role in clean energy systems, some referring to hydropower's role in balancing wind and solar specifically, and many others referred to promoting the benefits of pumped storage hydropower. Another particularly interesting topic highlighted was cybersecurity of hydropower projects, and there were also comments about the digitization of hydropower as an emerging topic and possibly an emerging opportunity for hydropower. So we move towards the end of the webinar. We asked some questions relating to IHA's work and communications. I've just included a graph here with regard to the communications that we produce, and I thought this was interesting just because it highlights that respondents very clearly said that the most useful hydropower communications that we at IHA produce, but the most communications, the communications around hydropower that they found to be most useful are very clearly those relating to information about the status of hydropower and data on hydropower. So country reports, regional analysis, hydropower statistics reporting, policy analysis, these are seen to be the most important hydropower communications. And on that topic, we will soon be publishing our annual briefing, Key Trends in Hydropower. This will give a breakdown of the new capacity that came online in 2016 with regional distribution, and also an analysis of the 5 big hydropower trends, and then also the 2017 hydropower status report. This will include full regional and selected country analysis, so it will basically elaborate on what we highlight in Key Trends in Hydropower, but with much greater detail. We go into detail on many of the topics, and there'll also be various maps and infographics that will highlight some of the key statistics shaping hydropower development today. And finally, we would like to remind you that the most pressing issues for the sector will be discussed at the World Hydropower Congress in May 2017. More than 600 decision makers are expected to join us in Addis Ababa, so if you haven't registered already, I invite you to do so. The program and early registration brochure can be downloaded from our website. You will also find the most up-to-date program on our website. Organisations such as Itaipu Binational, China Three Gorges, EDF, the Ethiopian Electric Power Company, the Nature Conservancy, ESCOM, Sarawak Energy, and HPC in India will all be present, and we'll be counting on you for this major gathering for the sector. So once again, please do get in touch or visit the website if you'd like to get more information. We'll be launching the online registration for the Congress later this week. So now we come on to the point where we can take some of your questions. We're running quite short of time now due to some of the technical difficulties we've had earlier, but we will take just 1 or 2 questions. As a reminder, you can submit your questions using the questions pane located near the bottom of the control panel. We'll try to take as many questions as we have time for. So if you'd like us to mention your name and organisation when we read your question, please do remember to include that in your submission. So one question that we had is it possible to get any more detailed analysis or breakdowns of some of the segments? For example, I think this question refers to topics, like how the different segments answer the topics. It will be no problem at all. If there's any particular segments that you're interested in, you can email me on at@hydropower.org, and I can help to provide you with that information. Another question is, are you happy with the results of the survey? Did you expect them? Obviously, we had the results of last year's survey, which was the first annual issue survey that we had implemented as kind of a baseline indicator. And obviously, we carry out various sector monitoring around the year. I mean, at the heart of what IHA does is to monitor the sector, to keep an eye on what's happening in hydropower around the world through initiatives like the survey, but also through media monitoring, through the partnerships that we build. And so through that work, we have a very good view of what's happening around the world. The survey will also come up with a few little nuances and surprises. It's very interesting to look at those segments, for example. In terms of the broader trends, there's probably nothing I would say is too surprising, but it's very interesting, for example, to look at something like the confidence in the future growth of the sector, and see that there is much higher confidence among heads of organisations, and that the regional breakdown creates a very different picture. So there are many ways that we can draw conclusions from this, but perhaps it could be seen that those at the head of the organisation have the broader strategic view, and so it's very interesting that the people in those positions are saying that there's actually quite a positive outlook for the sector. In terms of, are we happy with the results? I mean, our role is to build and share knowledge, so we're pleased to be able to be in a position to interact with so many of you, and I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank everyone who's participated in the survey. Everyone who's participating in the webinar today is someone who has taken part in the survey. Basically what the survey does is it helps us to clarify that picture of how it's perceived, how the trends in the sector are perceived. That can help shape our work program, and it can also help us deliver more accurate information to the hydropower community. So that's it for the questions today. All that remains is for me to say thank you once again for taking part. We'd appreciate if you can take a few moments after the webinar to answer a very, very short survey on your experience today. There are just 3 questions in the survey. This will be launched in the webinar viewer after we've finished. If you have any problem accessing it, please don't worry. You'll receive a link to the survey by email. As I mentioned earlier, we've recorded the webinar, so we'll be able to circulate that if you would like a copy of the record. If you would like to watch the recording, please just get in touch with us. You can get in touch with myself on at@hydropower.org. So thank you very much for participating today, and we hope to see you again soon.